welcome everybody. I'm going to lean over here and talk into the mic so you can hear me. Good evening, good afternoon. Start this whole thing again. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's morning somewhere, it's evening somewhere else. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's a good night, everybody. Thank you and good night. One finger at a time piano lesson on the day that Little Richard died. Wow, man. Ay. Little Richard really was the sound of New Orleans. He was from Georgia, but that's the sound of New Orleans. With Red Tyler and Earl Palmer and Frank Fields and Lee Allen. Justin Adam, Ernest McLean. These were the studio musicians that backed up Little Richard at Cosmo's studio on Rampart Street, which is, the building is still there, and you can go inside. It's a laundromat now. And you can wash your dirty drawers and stand in the same spot right by where the drying machines are, where Little Richard belted out Tutti Frutti. Anyway, well, today on the lesson, what we've been doing so far is half an hour of piano for beginners, basically, but with a bit of a New Orleans angle to it. And, you know, music theory can be boring and hard to understand when you want to just crack on and play. It's the same way as if you wanted to learn French and had to sit there all the time with an exercise book rather than have a glass of wine and just start trying to have a conversation with a French person. That's the same principle, really. So we want to get on and play some stuff. But there is theory involved, and it's the theory that makes it interesting, and it gives you the building blocks that you can then utilize when you're by yourself with the piano trying to figure things out. So we've done several things in these lockdown weeks of looking at the piano and playing, starting with Lean On Me. And I start each lesson with a recap of what we've done, but we've actually covered so much ground that I could spend an entire half an hour just recapping. Where today I think perhaps we should pay tribute to the last man standing, who is Jerry Lee. Someone else who personifies the sound of Louisiana, this part of the country anyway. He's from Faraday, which is up in the north of the state, part of Louisiana that has very little in common with southwest Louisiana. But we're going to play a basic Little Richard basic Jerry Lee boogie woogie, and it's really easy. Essentially, it's really easy, but for people who are just starting, it's going to be a while to get a handle on it. We're going to play it in C. Move the mic back. She must be obeyed. It's telling me to redirect it so you can see the fingers. So we're going to start in C. A lot of the stuff we've been doing has been in C because it's a great beginner's chord, and it's actually a beginner's key. And it's one I like because it allows you easy access to all the blue notes that can be fingered in the right way to give it that New Orleans vibe. But C is here, middle C, just to recap. In my case, it's just beneath the Y of Yamaha brand of piano that I'm employing today. C, that's the note. C, there's the chord, the triad, three notes, the three basic elements that comprise C major. Here's C on the bass, and here's C on the bass too, using two fingers, or a finger and a thumb, to make it sound extra big, or go all the way down. Now you've got an expensive bass player in your band right there. Because what you're doing there is you're making it sound tough, which shows you how important it is that you get the right, not just the right chords, but the right voicing of a chord. And that is to say that there's lots of ways you can play even just the three notes of C major. That's the most simple, but if I play it with my fingers like this, you can see it really easily. But we talk quite a lot, and I've been trying to explain that you can change the positions. So you can play C on the top of the chord, and it's still C major. It's just in a different position, or a different shape, you could say, or you could say a different voicing. The technical term is it's a different inversion of the three notes. And you can go up and down the whole keyboard. It's good practice just to play with C all the way up to the top, and then you can do it with F. We learned how to play F because we went, that's F. Same thing. And the same thing with G. it's good just to spend a few minutes just doing that with each other. It won't seem like it's doing you any good at the time, but the more you do it, every couple of days to sit there and do it, you start to not only to find it more easy to get the shapes, but you start recognizing some similarities. So that's C, that's F, that's G. We talked about C minor, changing that one note of the three, and then you do the same thing. First inversion, second inversion. Well, here we're going to play this. Well, now come on over, baby, whole lot of shaking going on. Come on over, baby, whole lot of shaking going on. I ain't thinking, there's a whole lot of shaking going on. Come on over, baby. Okay, so this is what we're going to do in order to play Jerry Lee Lewis. C, play the chord of C, 3 fingers. Everybody got that? Take out the middle note. So now it's still C, but it's just 2 notes. We've removed the third. I know it looks like it should be called the second note because it's the second of 3, but it's called the third because you're in this major scale. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the whole major scale of C. So if you say the third note of the chord, it's actually the second finger. When you say the third, you're not talking about the number of fingers, you're talking about the notes. You're taking out the third. If you remember, the third is the note of the chord that governs whether it's happy or sad. It's a minor chord. And by leaving it out entirely, you're not quite sure what it's supposed to be. It's undefined, which is good, because what you're left with are the city ramparts. These are the tough parts of the chord, the outer shell. Now you play that like that with your right hand. Play it right here with your left hand. If you play a triad, there it is. Take this out, and we're left with the outer walls. And I say that because it is, to me, it always sounded really tough. That's why in tough blues, if you take this down an octave, make it sound a bit even tougher still. Play that thumb, a little finger here, thumb here. That's C. Now go like this. That's the basic blues. It's like a Jimmy Reed kind of blues. It's actually a technique that guitar players use a lot. Guitar is suited to this if you're playing in the good keys, the open string keys in the guitar, which is E and A and D. That's the basic blues lick in C. Do the same thing. Move your fingers up to F. Remember, this is the shape for F. We went on Lean on Me. There's F. Take out the middle note, which is called the third. So you're leaving the note that governs the mood of the chord is removed. So you don't really have that, and you end up with a more tough chord. And then once you've got these 2 notes, do the same thing as you did in C by using your thumb to go up and down. Just try playing that for a minute. Now go back to C. Go back to F, and at this point you should starting to get to the point where when I say go to F, you start to recognize where F is. In a few of the previous lessons, we've taken a pencil and drawn some of these letters actually on the keys. So this note is F. That's C, D, E, F. Do it again, same thing. We've done it in C and F. Now we've just got to do the same thing in G, and we've got the three building blocks of a Jerry Lee boogie. So here's G. Here's F. Here's C, which is the home chord. So I'm calling it the home chord because what we're learning is in the key of C, in which case C is called the root, another term musicians use to describe this, just so you start learning the language. It's the root. A lot of musicians say it's also the one, because it's the chord from which you usually start and to which you return in the key of C. We don't need to dwell on that too much. Anyway, so do the same thing now with both hands. So we've gone from one finger at a time to 2 fingers and 2 thumbs. And I'm pulling my other fingers right out of the way so you can see it easy on the screen. And ordinarily your fingers would be up here, but just off the keys and out of the way. But I'm going to pull them back like this so you can see what's going on. And now, these two are going to stay the same, and these two are going to play the line we were just playing before. We're going to play a rhythm to it, and the rhythm is really easy. Starting with your right hand, go. Starting with your left hand, forgive me, go. Go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. They're called eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Whole notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, no, that's not right. Quarter notes. I'm thinking of something else. 1, 2, 3, 4, because you break a bar into a quarter. Do that. Put your hands back on the piano. Here, C, G, C, and G. Get your hands in the right place. Lift them up. And the motion for this should be coming from your wrists, from your fingers, and from your elbows and your shoulders. And everything should be kind of suspended so that the task is shared amongst all these different groups of muscles. And then we're going to do this. Check it out. If I do it slowly, which at the moment doesn't sound very musical, but persist, because now every other one we're going to move the thumb like we were doing before. Anything that's moving is the thumb here. It's going from this note to this note. And we're alternating the hands. Now we do the same thing, move everything up. Keep the distances between your thumbs and your fingers the same. Lock them in position, as it were, and just move everything up to F. And move everything up once again. Lock the relative position of your fingers and thumbs, and just move your whole hand up, or your torso, your shoulders, whatever it is, just to move up one note. And now you've got G. It's a good practice to do this, because when you're moving and going from chord to chord, you don't want to stop have your fingers go all floppy and then start trying to recreate the shape again, because that's going to interrupt the flow of your groove. But if you can get used to the idea of locking, of not so you make your hands stiff, but you're just keeping the position the same, remembering the position and moving your whole, you're just turning around like this. See? So let me just play you a little bit. I've just been showing, but this is what we're going for. Well, now come on over, baby. Whole lot of shaking going on. Come on over, baby. Whole lot of shaking going on. I am thinking there's a whole lot of shaking going on. Come on over, baby. We got the book by the horns. Come on over, baby. We got the book by the horns. I ain't thinking there's a whole lot of shaking going on. That's playing it pretty fast, the same tempo as the record. It's going to take you a while. If you're a beginner, it's going to take you a while to build up the speed, but you can do it, and you have the basic building blocks all right there. When you're playing it, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is on the 1. This is another interesting little tip. When you hear musicians talk about the 1, they could be either talking about rhythm or harmony. In the case of rhythm, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Play the beat on 1, 2, as opposed to 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3. So if someone says hit it hard on the 1, that's what it means. This is on the left hand is on the 1. If you're talking about harmony, you could say, someone says play a 1. That's 1, acknowledged as being the first note of the major chord. 1, that's a 2, that's a 3. We were just talking about that earlier on. That's called the 3rd, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and you could call this 8, but essentially it's just 1 again, because now you're starting with the next octave and the next octave. So when you play this groove, play on the 1 and start off playing it slowly. Come on over, baby, a whole lot of shaking going on. Come on over, baby, a whole lot of shaking going on. I ain't thinking there's a whole lot of shaking going on. Come on over, baby, we got chicken in the barn. What barn? Whose barn? My barn. Come on over, baby, whole lot of shaking going on. I ain't thinking there's a whole lot of shaking going on. Oh, shake, baby, shake. Shake, baby, shake. Oh, shake, baby, shake. Oh, shake, baby, shake. I ain't thinking there's a whole lot of shaking going on. Good golly, Miss Molly, show like a ball. Good golly, Miss Molly, you show like a ball. When you're rocking and rolling, you can hear your mom call. Tutti frutti, on Rudy. Tutti frutti, on Rudy. Ooh, tutti frutti, on Rudy. Tutti frutti, on Rudy. Tutti frutti, on Rudy. So you can see, you can use these not just with Jerry Lee tunes, but you can, any rock and roll tune. Most rock and roll tunes are 3 chords, and when you play them like that, it's good, because when you leave out that 3rd, and you're just left with the basic concrete shell of the chord, it just sounds tough. It has that attitude that you want when you're playing funk or R&B or some aspects of it. I tend to think that that's a very masculine sound. It's the feminine quality is the 3rd, which I think amazing, incredible amount of control over the overall colours that you're playing with. Very important. But if you remove that, you're just left with this, which is kind of barbaric. But sometimes it's good to have some barbarism in your music, and it's up to you really as a musician later on to decide how much of certain flavors to leave out as well as which flavors to put in. Same principles, and we end up coming back to food analogies in New Orleans. Practice here. Take your fingers off the keyboard, find the spot, find the right notes. C, G, C, G. Take your fingers off, keep them in the same relative position to each other. Go on the wall, on the top of a table. Many people are right-handed. It'll be more intuitive to start with the right hand. But if you do that, then it's back to front, because the bassier notes are handled by the left hand. And that's really that's where you want the one to be. So count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Used in the back of your mind to have this kind of clicking tick-tock going on, this counter, and listen at how long you stay on each chord, because that's the next important thing, is developing an intuition so that you know when it's time to go to the next chord. And until you're a little bit fluent with it, there's going to be some stumbling. It takes a while to arrange your fingers in the right position. And you just have to keep practicing. There's really no way around that, I'm afraid. There's no short answer, but it doesn't take very long when you're doing this basic stuff. And the baby steps, once you've made them, allow you to start taking much bigger strides. So it gets easier in some respects. So just to recap, we're playing rock and roll tunes, 3-chord rock and roll tunes. And this is kind of a style that came out of all sorts of places, but is often associated with Louisiana, especially in piano terms, with Little Richard, Fats Domino, and Jerry Lee Lewis. You can play Fats Domino, for example. Well, I'm ready, I'm willing, and I'm able to rock and roll all night. I'm ready, I'm willing, and I'm able to rock and roll all night. Come on, pretty baby, we're gonna rock, gonna roll till tomorrow night. 'Cause I'm ready, I'm willing, oh yeah. But I'm ready and I'm willing, so you better come along with me. We're gonna rock and roll early in the morning about 3. Okay, put my fingers up. I've been doing it like this, but it kind of feels weird, so I'm gonna put my fingers back up here now. If you want, press the pedal on the right-hand side, and if you keep it pressed down, you'll hear that all the strings just keep on ringing. And it sounds kind of good at first, but it comes a cacophony, especially when you change keys. It sounds like this. Very musical if you use it too much, but if you start getting used to putting your foot down and the quarter notes, then you can give the chords and the whole thing a bit more energy and a bit more drive and a bit more ambience, because the strings are all resonating and the sound waves bouncing off the walls. And it's quite exciting. You can't let all of the notes ring all the time, otherwise it ends up sounding mushy. You can't see my feet on this thing, so we haven't run out of cameras. So practice, a whole lot of shaking going on, and count get used to play the song. I'm not sure what key the song is in. It might very well be in C, or F or G. To recap, these are the three chords we're working with. We're in the key of C, and we're playing C, F, and G. And by way of illustration, if we weren't playing in that case, say for example we were playing in the key of G, G is the 1 now. 1. And in this case the three constituent chords would be G, C, and D, one we haven't touched on. But you could play the same song in this key, and this is what it would sound like. Well, now come on over, baby, a whole lot of shaking going on. Come on over, baby, a whole lot of shaking going on. I ain't faking, there's a whole lot of shaking going on. I'm going to go back to the original keys. Come on over, baby, a whole lot of shaking going on. It's a higher key. Well, now come on over, baby, a whole lot of shaking going on. I ain't faking, there's a whole lot of shaking going on. Plenty of stuff to work with, and next week we'll stretch out a little bit and get more into boogie woogie. This is a very basic version, and if you're going to play it like Jerry Lee, you got to play it fast and with a lot of attitude. It's quite a full sound, and basically you're emulating the sound of a band. And this riff sounds great when you're doing solo gigs. It also sounds great when you're playing with a good bass player and a drummer. It just sounds really, really tough. And it sounds tough because you've reduced it to its basic elements. And the important thing to remember always with music is complex isn't necessarily good, sophisticated isn't necessarily good, clever isn't necessarily good, and easy and basic isn't necessarily bad. Sometimes it's the most basic stuff that says the most and ultimately moves you more, and that makes it better music. Good musicians will attest to that generally, and I think that probably most of them would agree that you have to be able to operate pretty well at both ends of the spectrum. And there's nothing wrong with really basic stuff if it works, if it moves you, which is ultimately the point of music, to move you in some kind of way, not necessarily even to give you pleasure. Some music can be quite painful or quite sad to listen to, but it moves you emotionally, and that's the mystery of music. No one knows why it is that when you play this and strings jiggle and move columns of air that hit your eardrum all within a split second and then travel down into your inner ear, and those vibrations do something inside your head which evokes a response, and it's something that people dig so much that they pay good money to go out and hear good people doing it on records or in gigs or whatever. And it's very, very important, music. There's no society on the planet that hasn't utilized music in some form or another. And so here's a good one, Jerry Lee Lewis. We're going to come to the end. I'm just going to play it to you one time round, fairly slowly, play along, and then you can play all of these back and practice them. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Whole lot of shaking going on. Come on, baby. Whole lot of shaking going on. I ain't thinking. There's a whole lot of shaking going on. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll be back here on Tuesday for the Quarantini Happy Hour, and on Thursday for a Quarantini Happy Hour, and we're wondering whether we should adjust the time of that to make it more convenient for European listeners, and wondering perhaps if we should broadcast here at noon rather than at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock in UK is 7 o'clock in the evening, and in Paris it's 8 in the evening. So depending what time you're putting the kids to bed or cooking your dinner or putting your favourite thriller on the telly, it might be that 12 o'clock is a better time to do that broadcast. We're still getting lots of viewers, which is great, from all around the place, not just Europe, but from Argentina and New Zealand, California, and New York, as well as right here in the neighborhood in New Orleans. But if you have any particular feelings about that, let us know, because we're flying in the dark here with this. That's if anybody's even listening or watching. I guess there might be some people out there. Feel free to send in some questions and shed on this and practice it. And see you next week, one finger at a time.